Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Scoreboard Keepers. We got a great debate today to score on. Ladies and gentlemen, strict parents versus free range parents. We'll be right back in 30 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the Scoreboard Keepers. You're around here, we don't keep receipts, we keep the score. So if you want to get on the board, make your point. If it makes sense, we'll add it to the board. If it don't, we won't. Scoreboard Keepers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Scoreboard Keepers. Thank you for being here. I am your host, the Ref. We have a great topic on the board today. Strict parents versus free range parents. Let's get right into it.
So I would be very disappointed if she chose not to be a mother. But if she came to me and said, I've decided I'm not going to have any children, I'm going to look at her and I'm going to say, you can make the decisions you're going to make in your life. I have raised you to be an independent person capable of making your own decisions. I am grossly disappointed that you've come to that conclusion because I don't think you're going to find happiness there.
I don't know how safe it is to be like, you'd be disappointed if she didn't follow through with what you had wanted for her.
Welcome back to Middle Ground. My name is John, and I am a dad. And so I'm looking forward to moderating today's discussion between strict parents and free-range parents. I've secretly checked my kid's phone. Will the agreeers step forward?
Very interesting topic to start off with, people. Very interesting. We're starting off with a topic already of basically privacy and how you feel about your violating the privacy of your children, and then you think it's necessary. So we're going to score this debate as honestly and as accurately as possible how we see it. And if you have any opinions or any comments, leave them down in the comments below, or you can join the show and we'll check them, we'll read them, and hopefully they can contribute to the show and to judge this thing as fair as possible. So let's get right into it. You'll see the points going up on the board for whoever's making the points, as you know. We score these things accurately, people. We listen to very intently on what the people are saying. So let's go.
Hello.
Yes, I have.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it doesn't become a secret because they are aware at one point in time. I'm going to check just because I know how I am as a human, just the same. Like if I can get away with something, perhaps I may just do that said thing. So I just want to be mindful, and I don't know what they're exposed to. I think we know that society is the way that it is, and I don't want them to fall into some sort of circumstance because I didn't monitor what I needed to look at within their phone or because you don't know what people are saying to them in addition to what they're saying out. And I just want to be raw and unfiltered, what's really going on, and then we'll have a conversation. But do I check it in frequency without them being aware? No, but there have been instances where I'm like, I just want to know what's going on.
How old are your kids?
They're 9 and they're 13.
They're 9 and 13,
And they're both boys.
they're both boys. They both have a phone?
They both have a phone, they do. And I think the instance is, well, I'm certain of it. The decision to get them a phone was, there's a lot of fighting in school, and fighting to not just, I don't agree with you, guns. And I couldn't always be sure that the school, because I work in a school, so I know the length of time it takes to process and connect with the parents. There's been instances where there's been a gun brought on school, or children, like somebody has broken into school and it's 3 or 4 hours later from the circumstance. What could have happened in that time that my kids didn't communicate with me?
Ladies and gentlemen, she did get a point. She received a point for that. She made a good point because kids are bringing guns into schools, and there's a lot of things going on within these schools nowadays with these kids and these mass shootings. But I'm not going to take the point away from her because she did make a good point. But my advice is that, in my opinion, is that 9 times out of 10, if a mass shooter is coming into school and they're shooting up the school, dialing a phone number or trying to call somebody other than 911 If you're not calling 911, you're basically defeating the purpose of having the phone. It would be my recommendation that you would tell them to call 911 and not to be calling you. The phone is not to reach out to you, it's to call 911 or to just listen, try to get out of the building. Try to get to somewhere safe as safely as possible, as quickly as possible, and to find somewhere where you find safety. Find safety. If they're calling just to talk to you, so just inform you on what's going on, you're of no you can't help those kids. You're of no help at that point. Because all you're going to do is tell them exactly what I'm telling you. Call 911, and in that time, they're wasting a lot of valuable time. So you made a good point, but it is our opinion that they should be calling and dialing 911. So we're not going to take the point away from you. We're going to give you the point.
I was not aware. So they have a phone because of that.
We handed our kids phones and said, this is ours, and we will check it. And it's a safety measure. It's a, what are you looking at? You are handing them a supercomputer. It's devastating. It's scary. Like, you have no idea. So we have,
what are your kids'
I have an
ages?
18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 13-year-old. She'll be 14 soon. And so for my oldest, when he was 16, he actually went through this like really terrible season of depression. And so his phone was being checked daily to make sure that he was okay, that he was kept safe, and that we knew where his head was at, because that was like safety. And then as he got better.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a child that's going through some type of depression, wouldn't you want to be talking to your children to find out where their head is at? If you have to look on a phone that has security locks, security features, you're not going to find out by the time you find out what's going on with your child, it's more than likely too late. So I don't think that you should be looking on their phone, not that you won't find any information on there, but if you've come to that point, if you've reached that point to where you have to be looking in their phone to find out if your child's head is in the right place, that tells me that you're not communicating with your child. The relationship between you and your child is there's something being hidden there. You're not having a good relationship, because you shouldn't have to look on the phone for information if if you're talking to your kid and you're seeing your kid on a daily basis. So she won't be getting any point for that one right there. She tried to make a point, but that wasn't. I don't think that was a good point to make.
And was coming out of that season, it just got less and less. One, it honestly makes me very anxious to check his phone, because you don't know what you're going to find. My middle kiddo, he's very private, and he does not want his phone checked. And so we say, don't give us a reason to check it. Like, it's fine. And one of the things that we will do is we'll sit like all together on the couch and kind of scroll TikTok together, so I can see like what your algorithm feeding you. And then my daughter, she has something on her phone that alerts us if there's bullying, profanity, just any sort of things. Like, it'll send us an alert saying, hey, your daughter's phone has like this text message on it, and it actually screenshots it for us and lets us go through it. And then it says like, here's helpful ways to have a conversation about bullying on the internet and stuff like that. So really and truly, ours is just like, it's a safety precaution, and we have needed to use it. And then as our kids have gotten older, like our 18-year-old, we were kind of like, we're not going to check it unless you give us cause, like unless we have to.
At what age did you decide to give your kids a phone?
So we had friends who gave us great advice, and it was you and your spouse, partner, whatever, want to get a hold of your student or your child 3 times separately. So once you hit that, you're like, oh shoot, I wish I could text them. I need to let them know this. 3 times each of you, so 6 times total. It was like, it's time to get a phone. And that really was middle school for us when they were.
Ladies and gentlemen, this mother here sounds like the type of mom would text her kids from downstairs to upstairs to tell them to come. It's dinner time. She's getting advice from friends about her own children. She's looking for algorithms. She's talking about bullying on the internet as if it does not exist. I'm not really comfortable with her response right now. Not enough to give her any points, to be honest with you. She's saying a lot, but she's not making any points right now. Any points. She's giving her personal experience, with how she's handling things. But if you have to sit down and scroll TikTok just to look at an algorithm, you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking in the wrong place. It's so much going on the internet right now. You don't know where that algorithm could be going. You don't even know what it's suggesting. You have your cell phones and tablets and laptops and stuff now recommending things for you just by, places you go. You could just walk by a store, and next thing you know, you have an ad popping up on your phone suggesting that you purchase something from that store. So I'm not agreeing with the algorithm. She's not getting any points for that.
When they were like catching buses or after school practice, or I need to stay late for tutoring, that kind of thing, that's kind of when we
For the sake of
found it.
communication, just making sure.
Yep.
Okay, we know
And safety. I think
And
you're absolutely right.
safety.
Safety in school is
Yeah.
really important to have that kind of communication. And then our daughter got one a little bit younger, but that's because she was in a school that was farther away. She had transportation time, so she was just able to like play games on her iPad.
The exposure you can get from the internet, and then I'm like, oh, well, I have to be sure of
Yeah.
what's going on with my son, because depression and all those things have
Yeah.
to be
What
considered.
was the age you chose?
I think my youngest was, 8, and my eldest was 10.
Let's bring in our disagreeers.
Here we go. This
I
should
got
get good.
my daughter, she's 29, the oldest one. She got a phone when she was about 7 or 8 because we lived in Manhattan during 9/11, and she didn't have a phone, and she was in grade school, and we couldn't get to her. The towers are coming down. We're trying to get to her, and I was like, that'll never happen again. So we got her a phone, and we had this rule that don't make me have to check it. If I have to check it, then there's going to be consequences. But when I hear you guys talking about that, every kid who came over to my house had a way to get around what you guys are talking about. And if they didn't, their friend did. So I think building that trust with your child that, don't make, like, I was that parent of, I want you to have privacy, but I will take the door off the hinges if I think something's going on.
I would say
Great
if you've
point.
given your kid a phone at 8 years old or 10 years old, you're not a strict parent because you do not have control. If you think you have control, you don't have control.
You have
Great
8 kids,
point.
right?
I have 8 kids. My oldest is 14. My youngest is turning 2. So
Do you
we're
have any
now
phones?
No, not a single phone in the house because here's the deal. So that sounds strict, right? No, because free range is about setting boundaries and having the kids operate freely within the boundaries. Our boundary is you don't have phones. When I get to the point where my kid needs to have a phone, I sure as heck better trust what they're going to do on that phone because I have no control over it. My point is that, we frame out these reasons why our kids have to have phones. I'm concerned about the school shooter. I need to know about that. I need to hear from them in football. My kids don't have a phone, and they are better for it because they have to learn how to operate. They have to learn how to problem solve without it.
Will you
right?
when they start?
Ladies and gentlemen, Steven's on fire. Okay? Steven's on fire. He was making points left and right. He's absolutely right. Free range within the boundaries. It sounded strict, right? But then he went and gave you the definition of what he meant by it being free range. Free range within the boundaries. Yes, the boundaries are set, and they have free range within those boundaries. Steven, something tells me you're a great parent.
Driving, will you give them a phone?
We may have a car phone that is a very simple phone, but they will not have a personal phone. But for
When's
things,
the age?
well, driving would be the first time we would even discuss it because of the fact if I get stuck on the side of the road, there are not institutional measures anymore to help that. But everything else, my kid goes on a field trip. I hear this one all the time. My kid goes on a field trip. They need to have their phone. The teacher's got a phone. Why the heck does your kid need a phone?
I think it's just interesting to say, in the event that a thing happens, they could problem solve. There are many instances, especially with CPI or like disciplinary, there are instances to where your problem solving is very limited as a teacher and as a student. And my children, I don't want them to not be equipped or given any sort of option. Mom, I am in a dangerous situation. I cannot navigate this. I need this support.
So I have an 11-year-old daughter. She got a phone when she was 9, and we only decided to get the phone because that was the time that we decided that it was time for her to move with her dad and spend some time with her dad. Now, she had tablets and stuff, that one at his house, one at my house, and so my concern was whenever she was at his house, if he took the tablet away from her or if they were out for a long period of time, I couldn't get a hold of her.
Raise your hand when
Raylene, she's not getting the point. You sounded like you were checking up on your child while she was with her father. You didn't have, she's with her father. You don't need to be checking up on her. If he took her tablet because she wasn't supposed to be communicating. Why would you be checking up on her? You didn't get any points for the free range just now. I totally disagree with you. You sound like you were checking up on your ex. You wasn't checking up on your child. You was checking up on your ex. Why are you calling your child while she's spending time? Obviously, she's not with her father all the time. Why would you be calling up and interrupting that time that he has with his child? You know what we do around here, Raylene? I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. But around here, we actually, you can actually lose points for your team. And if you look up on the board, you just did for the free range. Because that's not why she's supposed to be communicating, for you to check up on her while she's with her father. She's with her father. As a matter of fact, if you were trying to reach her while she was with her father, you should have called the father. Why would you be calling the child? The adult is in the house with her. You're supposed to be reaching out to the adult, not her. You're superseding his power at that point. You're superseding his position at that point by calling in and checking on the child as if the father is not right there and taking care of her. Let's go, guys. She lost a point for her team.
We're at the age that you think it's appropriate to have a phone in today's context. So let's start with age 5, age 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
I know.
13, 14, 15.
We can jump up to 16.
And 16. Okay, so that was our range.
Are you stuck in a disagreement where both sides think they're correct?
Interesting. I noticed that Steven said that he agreed with the 16 years old. That's when a person should be able to have a phone. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Because they'll be almost driving at that point. And that's interesting. It's very interesting. That was a great question. Some of those people said 5, 6, 7, and 8 years old, which is insane. Which is insane for a person to have a phone that young. I was thinking somewhere within their teenage years myself. I don't think 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds know the power of a cell phone. At that point, they're supposed to be around adults anyway. So it's good. Interesting. Something to think about. That's something to ponder right there. Because I guess it would basically depend on your situation and what you got going on. If you live in this, in a rural area, and it depends on your surroundings, basically, when it comes to needing or finding it necessary for a child that young to have a phone. So let's go.
Well, now's your chance to find out who's right. If you have a situation like this, we'd love to hear your story. Click the link.
But leave in the comments, guys. Leave in the comments on what you think is a proper age for a child to have a cell phone. I want to see the numbers in there.
In the description to submit for Am I the Asshole in Real Life.
Boys should be raised differently than girls. Agree or step forward?
Wow. Here we go. Boys should be raised differently than girls.
Before having both, a girl and two girls and a boy, I might have said something differently. There's just a different way you have to teach. Look, don't get me wrong. I empower my young women just as much as I empower my young man. But there are certain things I have to talk to my son about that I don't have to talk to my daughters about. And there are certain things I have to talk to my daughters about that I don't have to talk to my son about.
When we were adopting, you say what you want to adopt. And so we said we wanted to adopt a little girl because we knew that an adopted child coming into our home was going to be treated differently already, just with like some tenderness and some different things. Not that we're not tender to our biological children, but we said we would adopt a little girl versus a little boy because we already knew there was going to be some differences in how we would parent a biological daughter and our
Do you
sons.
have girls and boys?
I have two older sons and the little girl.
Do you feel like you're more strict with the boys than the girl?
No, actually, I'm stricter with my daughter.
I have 2 boys, so my question was going to be those of you that have girls, what would you say the difference is in the actual parenting style?
Parenting her heart is different than parenting my sons and their hearts in a sense, but my daughter's also the most strong-willed person I've ever met in my entire life.
Often when I hear the dynamic between a mom and a son, like the mom is she babies the son or she enables him a lot more than the girls. Since I don't have that point of reference, I'm like, I don't know.
I talked to my son last night and I was telling him, the one that had to send away to Louisiana to be with his father, I said, you are going to be a father one day. You're going to have to raise your children. You're going to have to be a leader. And I was telling him like all these things like, wow, Mom, I never thought about that. And that's why I was like, that's why I sent you away, because you have to teach boys and you have to train them differently than girls because they're mostly in the, I know it's different now with families and genders and stuff, but most boys are the leaders of the house. So that's why I was telling him last night, you have to be different, you have to be stronger, you know.
I get that.
Well, you have individual parenting. So I have 8 children,
That's what I was
6
gonna ask,
boys,
yeah.
2 girls. So I've got the whole spectrum, right?
Wow.
And so my
Wow.
oldest son is very different than some of my other sons, right? So he's very rambunctious and he's at odds with his mom all the time, and he has been since he was a child. The second son I have, who's right behind him, is very quiet and soft-spoken and friendly, and he loves his mom. And then I have the terminally cute son who never does anything wrong, but he's a mischievous kid. But they're all boys, and there's something about all of them, all 6 of the boys, which is they're all kind of action-driven, right? And then I have my 2 daughters who are also opposite sides. I have my older daughter who's very quiet and composed, and if you make her angry, she's going to go hide away in her room until she kind of sorts it all out. And then my youngest daughter, who is just a fireball. And so, you make her angry, she's going to say something right back to you. But both of them are relationship oriented. And I'm a bit old-fashioned. I'm a lot old-fashioned, but I believe that for the most part, men are made to be action-driven and women are made to be relationship-driven, and that it's understanding that makes us effective, right? And utilizing those strengths and weaknesses. But that comes across in parenting because I may spank this child 3 times today, the boy 3 times today. I don't have to spank the girl, right? Because she's much more concerned about the relationship with me.
The disappointment.
The son is just being rambunctious and needs a spanking.
Yeah, I would kind of agree a little bit with that. I feel like all my kids are action driven. I mentioned they're entrepreneurs, so they're all action driven. But that relationship is different because I could talk to my girls a little more and kind of work it out with them. With my son, like I said, he got spankings a little later because he was a little more like that testosterone was like, and so I had to be a little more sometimes hands on or just kind of like, look, you're not going to disrespect me. Versus my girls, I could sit down and talk to them, and they kind of, my oldest one back, but kind of like get it, like, okay, Dad, I see where you're coming from.
But I think if you over-discipline a girl, what you run into is a girl who feels very low self-esteem. It impacts them a whole bunch more. And especially as you get into teenage years with them, I mean, how many teenage girl problems are related to the fact that they've got these bad relationships?
Which is interesting too, because we've switched our parenting just as we are coming across hard times, or like struggles, I should say, and where her father actually will have those conversations with her more, because it's better to have her dad telling her, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is where I'm trying to teach you. Whereas her and I, both emotionally driven, both kind of like, I'm arguing, she's not a toddler, but it feels like I'm arguing with a toddler, and we're both like, ah! So it's better to have her dad come in with a more level head, action driven, saying like, this is where we're going and this is what I need you to understand. And
Jeanette, that's AKA cat fighting. That's a cat fight that you're explaining right now. And I've been listening to you very intently. I've been listening to you closely, and you sound as if you're parenting from a manual. You're afraid to be, you think that there's a blue book or some pamphlet to parenting. And when it goes off the rail, I don't think that you have the answers for it. Like right now, I think that you're winging it with your answers. You know, I think that you should be more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to disrespect your parenting. You should be more, as a matter of fact, about what you're saying, because it sounds like it's coming from like this like, it sounds like you have this notebook that you're just reading, and this works for this situation and that works for this situation, and then when something random comes, you go and grab the book and look, oh, this is what I do in this situation. And what you were just explaining was just basically catfighting between two females. Cat fight. Let's go. I can't give you any points. You know, I'm trying to put you on the board, but the personal experience I hear, but where are you? The question was, should you raise boys differently than girls? And you never answered the question. You're giving an experience. And I'm not 100% sure where you're going with it right now, but we're going to find out. So
I love that it's her dad because it's somebody who is leading her. Absolutely.
Let's bring in Adam.
You know, if there's 4 things that I can teach my kids, it's going to teach them, like the 4 most important things that I can teach my kids is that I love them, I want them to do hard things, I want them to be accountable, and I want them to be kind. And I want that for all of them. Mm-hmm. And if there's any difference in my parenting towards my daughters or my sons, it's strictly personality. It's what their different personalities are. Because my little girl, she's tough, she's rough. Like she's in a lot of ways like a little boy, like just rough and tumble and tough as nails. And so I adjust strategy to her personality, but it doesn't change how I parent her because of her gender. Now, ironically, I feel differently about my girls and my boys. Girls is just a soft spot in my heart, so I have to kind of fight against that, at least in terms of my strategy with them. Like I have to put that aside so I don't go easy on them, because at the end of the day, my goal is to prepare my kids for the world. Yeah. And that's girls and boys, and the world is going to be rough on them. And so it's getting them in fighting shape and trying to teach them what I think are the most valuable principles, and it's equal for all of them. So I don't feel like I look at them.
Do you believe that girls and that men and women have a different place, a different end in society, or do you think that you're level setting them to be equals?
What do you mean, I guess?
So, like, you know, when I look at my daughters, right, you know, again, old-fashioned, you know, I'm not afraid to tell my daughter, you know, oh, I want you to grow up and get married and have a family. I do believe that that is the role that was set aside for you, right? I'm not going to look at my daughter and say, yes, go girl, go be a CEO of a company, you know, and that's not because they shouldn't be. But it's again what I talked about at the beginning, which was the role of roles, right? The role that a man plays and the role based off the gifts and the talents that they bring. So I'm curious, you say that you raise them the same, mm-hmm. right? Are you raising them to achieve the same things, or do you think that there will be a natural divide there?
I'm raising them to achieve the same thing, in that I want them to go out and do what they want to do with their lives. That's what I'm raising them to do. Now, I happen to think my girls are going to be far happier as mothers than they are as a CEO or anything else. I'm far happier as a father than in anything else I do. So I teach them those things of what I think is like most valuable in life, which I do think the traditional family to me is the place you're going to find the most happiness and fulfillment in your life. So I teach that. Like, I'm like, hey, being a mother is the most badass thing that you can be. But I want her to go out and kick ass. I want her to go out and be strong. I don't want her to go out and be like racing into motherhood. I'd rather she get out there and like figure out who she is and what she really likes, and hopefully she carries those teachings, because I think ultimately she'll be happier as a mother than she will as anything else.
Do you think, because you want her to be a mother, and perhaps with your sons you want them to be a father, that there are different skills and characteristics for each of those roles, and maybe with the respect of that you may need to parent her with that consideration, but it's like how much of what you want for them is what's necessary for the tools that they need as a comprehensive woman?
Well, I think that it's a matter of identifying, again, going back to the fundamental question of gender, right? I do believe that there are two genders, and I believe you fall into one of the two of them, and that there are characteristics that are fairly universal among those two. There are always exceptions, but fairly universal. And it's not that, again, that I can't do things, but it's that there are certain things that I'm going to be better suited to because of the nature of who I am. And when I think about the family, that's motherhood and fatherhood, right? You know, we have men in this group who are the disciplinarians and women who are happy to mother their children, and there's some play in that role, but there's roles, right? And I think we as a society have overcorrected, right? You said Disney princess, oh, you know, that, where we've said, oh, well, that's bad, don't do that. And it's like, no, it's not bad.
I disagree because I think one of the things that is wrong with our society is that we push people into certain roles. I feel like when I raise my daughters and my son, I'm raising them to go after if they decide to get married, if they decide to have kids, that's something they're going to make in their life. But as in there's this role and that role, I stay away from that totally because I just don't agree. I think it pushes people into a box that later on they can regret.
To that point, I think that when it comes to marriage or when it comes to, I personally think it's about partnerships, right? Like there was like a big argument that I had with my ex-husband and he'd be like, you know, why don't you cook more? And I'd be like, well, you're a better cook than me, so why would I be cooking more? Like,
Ladies and gentlemen, I did not see. I knew it. I knew she has issues with her ex. Huge issues. She has huge issues going on with her ex. So this takes me back to why I took a point away from the team, because she wasn't just calling to check on her daughter. She wasn't just calling to check on her daughter. She was calling to check on her ex, and she probably was crossing the line. He probably was crossing the line, you know, during his, you know, parenting time. And she probably was just trying to show who was in charge and keeping her finger on the control button the entire time. And now it sounded like this. So now she's bringing up about his expectations of her when she was in the household, on why she wasn't cooking enough, or why couldn't she cook. I can't wait to see where this goes.
why are you putting that pressure on me? I never really cooked to begin with, and you knew this. So why are you putting this pressure on me because I'm a woman, but you cook better than me, so I'm going to cook for you and you're going to complain? You're trying to turn me into this traditional woman that you wanted me to be when you knew I wasn't that to begin with.
I firmly believe, whether it's because of my religious beliefs or whatnot, that she will find the most fulfillment in life by pursuing those things that it is to be a woman, one of which is motherhood.
Yeah. I guess the natural question then is, what do you anticipate your response will be should she not choose to become a mother?
Well, I would be very disappointed if she chose not to be a mother. But if she came to me and said, I've decided I'm not going to have any children, I'm going to look at her and I'm going to say, you can make the decisions you're going to make in your life. I have raised you to be an independent person capable of making your own decisions. I am grossly disappointed that you've come to that conclusion because I don't think you're going to find happiness there.
I don't know how safe it is to be like, you'd be disappointed if she didn't follow through with what you had wanted for her.
Being a parent constantly keeps you busy, so it can be hard when things pop out of the blue.
See, guys, when this is why we listen intently up here, because when people talk, you'll be able to figure out, if you listen very closely, you'll be able to figure out where they're coming from, because there's always some underlying issue in the background that goes along with the topic. There's always an underlying condition going on somewhere that goes along with the topic, man. And now I'm figuring out that some on the panel, are single. I can hear it. I heard, I believe her name is Denise, who sent her son to Louisiana to be with the father. She understood. He was probably getting, the boy was probably getting big in the house. He was probably trying to tell her what to do. He may have been not listening to her. It may have been some trouble outside her door that he was trying to get into. And she knew the safest place with him was with his father, who, if he had to, lay the law down, he would. And that's when she decided that, listen, I need to send him to Louisiana. Now, Raylene on the other side, how do you think she would be the type of mother that would relinquish her parenting duties if she was in that situation? I don't think so. I don't think that she would be able to do that. She's talking about being a traditional woman. Well, if you're not going to be a traditional woman, that means you're not going to be a traditional parent. You know, I mean, they both go hand in hand. If you're not if you're not a traditional wife, how can you be a traditional parent? Think about it, people. You got to listen to what people say. And we heard that very clearly. She specifically said out of her mouth, quote, "You knew that I wasn't that type of woman, a traditional wife, to do those kind of things." Well, kids require that. So if you're not cooking and he's not cooking, then the child's not eating. Think about it. If he's looking for her to cook and she's looking at him to cook, and the child's looking at both of them for food, then who's cooking in the household? Think about it.
Take unintentional injuries, for example. It can really throw a wrench in your plans as a parent to be taken out by an injury that makes it difficult to take care of your kid. Us parents already handle so much. So just know that if you ever find yourself getting injured, you can turn to Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Morgan & Morgan specializes in a wide range of personal injury cases and have won thousands of big cases. Just recently, Morgan & Morgan has secured verdicts of $12 million in Florida and $26 million in Philly. That's up to 40 times the highest insurance offer. I'm telling you, your case could be worth millions. The best part? It's all free, unless you win your case. If you've also been the victim of a personal injury or any other serious accidents, you can visit www.forthepeople.com/Jubilee, found in the description below, to start your free claim today. Thanks to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this portion of this episode. Now, let's get back to the video.
I would be open to my child transitioning. Agree or step forward?
I think as society grows and we look at sexuality as fluid and just genders as, fluid, I do think that our minds are very complex. And I think that as we grow as a society, we are realizing that it is not just black and white. There isn't just one or two genders, whatever it is. I think that I want what's best for my child in the way that they feel about themselves. I want them to live the most confident life that they can. And if they have been telling me there is something inside them that doesn't feel natural, doesn't feel right, I want them to explore that. I will allow you to make the decisions when you are of age to make your own decisions legally, but up until then, you can still explore and we can just have these conversations. I wouldn't do anything like permanent before they are,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's medically, I think that's an adult, you have to, and I'm not a doctor. From what I kind of know about it, I feel like you need to be fully grown before you can make decisions like that, just for your body to develop first. But that being said, I think we're going to look back at that question in 20 years and we're going to be like, why is that even a thing? Because I think 20 years from now, it's not even going to be an issue. Everyone's going to be doing what they want to do. It's going to be a lot more accepted. It's new.
I am a bisexual man, and I've been a bisexual man since I can remember. Now, I am in a 36-year relationship, monogamous with my wife. Does not mean that I still can't see a man and think he's attractive, but I knew before anyone knew. I knew when I was in grade school and I had a crush on a boy and a girl at the same time. So no one can tell me that, and I was raised in a very religious family. For too long, I shamed myself and thought there was something wrong with me because of something else, that the way I was just born. And for someone to tell me that I didn't know what I was feeling when I was a young boy and had to kind of figure it out because of shaming, no one should be put through that. Now, should you change your body before you become a legal age? I don't know about that. I don't have a child. I'm not dealing with that in my household. But I know if you feel something and you know something, no one can tell you what you're feeling inside.
Okay, let's bring in our disagreeers and everybody take a collective deep breath.
Interesting. This is here comes Steven too. Here comes Steven. This is going to be interesting.
I would start by saying I think transitioning, and this might be an ignorant take on me, and I just want to say that first. But I think that same-sex attraction and transitioning are separate. in my parenting role. If my kid came to me and said they wanted to transition, I would be devastated. I would be really sad. Again, grieving the future. Again, just wanting to make who I thought they were. Yes, but that to me also comes along. And I'm a very religious and relationally driven person. My faith is very important to me, but that also doesn't. That's not where I'm coming from with it. It's just a thought process of like, let's get into counseling. Let's see what's going on. Let's talk this out. And then again, the whole transitioning before you're a grown up, I think is just not what we need to be.
There's Jeanette again. She pulled that book out and she wants to, see what I'm saying? If she thinks it's an issue, let's go talk it out. You know what I mean? Let's go to counseling. So now she thinks that counseling is the answer. You know what I mean? You don't know what's going on inside of a person when it comes to this. Now we have our opinions on this, but we're not going to give it until after we hear everybody. We want to hear the entire matter before we give our opinion. We want to hear the entire matter. So let's go. Let's continue. But Jeanette, I see you pulled out your blue book, whatever it is you use, and you're sticking right to the regiment. You're sticking right to the regiment. So let's see. But it's interesting to see that Stephen, on the other side, who was with the free range parenting, he disagreed with the other three on his side, which are free range members. They're his team. That's its team. And he disagreed with them on this topic. So let's see. And he seems like he has a lot of supporters on the other side, on the strict side. So let's go.
But my heart is saying, like, I want to love my child well, and I think that if that was a conversation that was coming up, separate of same-sex attraction or anything like that, it would be a conversation with a counselor.
Yeah, I want to bring a similar distinction, right? So when you talk about transition, right, physically changing your body, what I'm concerned with anytime I hear that is that somebody is fundamentally rejecting their physical self. And I don't think that's right. And I don't, not just because I'm religious, but because I think that our efforts, specifically within the context of parenting, should always be to help our child understand that this is the body that you have, right? And then there are places in this world where we say, well, absolutely, right? If you were born without a leg, I can't make you feel good about the fact you don't have a leg, right? I need you to accept the fact that you don't have a leg. When it comes to transition, I'm strong opposition to that because I just think fundamentally ingrained in there is rejecting yourself. I'm going to, again, teach my children that, God made you a girl, and that's a girl, and you're going to be a girl, and that's what it's going to be. And if there's something dissettling about that, that's what we need to talk about.
What about if your daughter said, I want to get a breast augmentation. I want to change my body that way.
That doesn't change her recognizing herself as a female.
But that doesn't violate what you said earlier about the body that you have.
It does, and that's the second piece of it, which is where we'd have a different conversation on why are you dissatisfied with who you are? Who is telling you
why are you
you are not a good person just the way you are? What's fed that in your mind?
So I think it's interesting that all of us are here as parents and we're saying, hey, we know that it's healthy. I think we've all agreed on this, to give our kids a framework for how they're going to be most successful in life and how they're going to be happy. I think God or nature or whatever you want has given us that same framework. And I think the further we get away from, it's called science, and I think the further we get away from that, the further we get away from biology and we start coming up with all of these ideas, the further we're getting away from our nature and the more unhappy and disconnected we are from who we really are. You're encouraging something that's destructive to them ultimately. And because it's getting them further and further away from that framework that I think all of us can look around and see, hey, there is a system that is going on that we're all involved in. And the closer we pay attention to that and orient our lives to that, the happier, more fulfilled all of us seem.
But
I disagree.
Yeah,
I totally disagree. I totally disagree. It goes back to you're saying there's something wrong with that person because they feel a certain way. And I do not agree with that.
I'm not saying that feeling a certain way is wrong. I'm saying it's destructive behavior. It's like saying someone is depressed. Are you saying cool, you're depressed, I'm going to celebrate you being depressed and let me encourage you to be more depressed? You're like, no, that's an unhealthy.
So I totally do not see it that way. This person feels a certain way about who they are, their identity in this world. So look at you, you're a physically bulky guy. You feel better moving through life that way. You could be a totally skinny guy. You could be fat and not take care of yourself. But you feel a certain way in how you want to project yourself and who you want to be. That's what that person is feeling. They're feeling depressed because I'm not feeling like I belong in this body.
But how does a man or a boy know what a woman is? So they're making up their own subjective idea of what that is. It's not even a reality. They're coming up with, because a boy doesn't know what it is to be a girl. A man doesn't know what it is to be a woman. They're coming up with some subjective notion to that they're making up in their head and saying, now I'm going to try and chop my body up to look like that or be like something that they've just made up in their own head. It's not
Based
even
on
intrinsically
feeling.
true.
And then you said explore, and I think permanent decisions based on exploration and feelings, there may be a detriment because you don't have the full comprehensive picture of what that exploration is going to lead to. So making a very permanent decision, which I'm sure is reversible with enough science, but with consideration of scientific understanding, not just how we feel, because on different days I feel different ways. And how permanent do I want my decisions to be? And we would use that in a smaller frame, like how conflict works itself out. You're mad right now, so you did a thing because you're upset, but there could be a permanent decision because of that. So how can we give the support necessary to manage the feeling, or to know very well that that feeling extends beyond sentimentality, and maybe there's some scientific thing that can measure that definite decision?
My question to those that disagree, do any of you have trans friends or know trans people personally?
I do.
So the reason why I ask is because I do have trans friends, and when you're talking about depression and stuff like that, I totally agree with you, is that the depression may come from a place of no matter what they do, no matter what they have in life, no matter how loved they are, they just don't feel right. And I truly believe that, like, when I've seen my trans friends transition, their confidence has gone up, they're glowing, they're better people.
And that's
they're
what we
kinder.
ultimately said we all want for our kids.
Exactly.
Right?
And they don't.
Raylyn wasn't listening. She's still talking about the feeling. She's still talking about the feeling, and guess what? Here's what you missed, people. This is why Raylyn's not getting a point. Her friends are adults. Her friends that are transitioning are adults. The question were about your children. This is why we pay attention around here, people. This is why you got to listen intently. She was saying all that, right? And she thought that she was making points. But up here, we listen very closely. I told you we tried to be as honest and as fair as possible and not biased. She was talking about the transitioning of her friends, which are adults. The standards for your friends and the standards for the question that's being posed are like night and day. You can feel however you want as an adult. But the question was about if your children want to make the transition. And Raylyn, not your friends. Good try, but no points for you. Raylyn, you've actually been responsible for your team losing a point today. Let's go. Let's continue.
Do it like everyone's saying it like someone flicked the light and said, "Oh, I'm just going to do this."
Yes.
But how does somebody know that there's something that they're not?
Well, I will say this.
But
I will say this.
Like, doesn't
okay?
make any. It's
for like boys that are raised solely by women, right? And so some boys will be more feminine than others, right? Just naturally. And then they're saying, no, you have to be like a man. You have to be a man. You have to be more masculine. And then, but
that's a different discussion, though.
But the reality is, the idea of being masculine and feminine, that's a social construct, right? And I think that's when you're saying like, oh, they're just making up this idea. It's like, well, the whole thing is made up.
Feelings are feelings. Feelings are subjective. I'm totally with you, and I get everybody the whole spectrum of that. And I'm not throwing any stones at anybody for how they feel. I'm not throwing any stones at anybody transitions either. I'm trying to do what I think is healthiest for people.
For a little 13-year-old girl like me, starting my period, you know how scary that is. You don't want to talk about it. It's like, it's weird, right? So you don't know who to talk to. You don't know if you talk to your mom or not. For a little boy to come to me at 13 years old and say, hey, I want to be a woman, I would be like, look, I started my period at 13. It was scary. It was this. We gotta get through this. This is what you're feeling right now, but it's not probably what you want to be 20 years later.
But then what if he is? What if at 18 he's like, Mom, I'm still feeling this way, and this
That's
is what I
want to do. That's what I said. I would let him try just to get through it.
When you look at the statistics of how many non-binary people we have in this society, it's not a surprise why it's more now than it was 50 years ago. And I don't think, I personally do not believe that it is because there were a whole bunch of people hiding out in the closet just waiting for the society to become more welcoming. It is because now that we have a more welcoming society that says, hey, this is a thing you can do, especially when you're talking about teenage girls. I mean, how many teenage girls? It's almost becoming a fad with teenage girls to be non-binary.
See, I really don't believe it's a fad. And I disagree with you that it wasn't there 50 years ago. Yeah, it was. It's just that we didn't live in a society that was okay to talk about.
We have to think about it like, what a blessing now that we can have it.
But you can make your decisions.
You know, the kids or whoever can, like I said, can come.
I don't
and
think
be
it's
themselves.
a society telling them. I think it's people being in the closet because they're families.
Or do you think that there are different theoretical there are different theories on exposure and environment. If you've been exposed to something, and especially in a young, impressionable age, there can be a level of exposure that can direct.
Because I think that's exactly why we should be monitoring our kids' devices and what they're watching, what they're seeing, because you are opening up a world that they might not know of, so you're exposing them to something that's like, oh, maybe I do feel this way.
I guess if your son came up and said, I want to, identify as a woman, I want to move forward with living that lifestyle, I guess, how would you react to that?
I would do everything I could to dissuade them from that. I would make sure that through that whole process that it would never change how much I loved them. I think people should be allowed to do what they want to do. I believe that. My issue is not that. My issue are these groups and these parts of culture that are encouraging that and promoting it. I think it's obvious that that's happening right now. I don't think maybe there's a balance between you're saying, no, there all been these people hiding and pretending they're not that because society kept them that way. You're saying, no, they weren't there, it's being created. And I think there's something in the middle right now. What I have a problem with is people that are promoting things that I think are disorders. I don't have a problem with any of us having disorders. We all have it. I actually think it gives us diversity. I think it makes the world a more beautiful place. And the fact that we're all messy and imperfect is actually a really good, healthy thing. But if you started promoting, for example, the disorder of we shouldn't have kids anymore, that would be a disorder. Our species is going to be completely wiped out. Anybody promoting that, I think, is bad.
I've spanked my child. Will the agreeers please step
Adam
forward?
was on fire, people. Adam was on fire just now. Spankings now. Spankings.
Well, I can say, when my kids were younger, I came from a household where, you didn't ask questions. My dad, wait till your dad gets home. And I would say when my kids were younger, I'm 57 now and I have kids in their mid-20s. And when they were younger, I did spank them. It wasn't a thing of I wouldn't say abuse, but it was a thing of spanking, don't touch that pot, maybe smack a little bit on the hand or something like that. Because I feel like when they're younger, they have to kind of fear you a little more than what they're going to get into. As they got older, I used my words more so than, spanking.
I think that's absolutely normal because we have to establish safety first, and then as they grow, you're able to communicate more. And I think that's exactly how we've raised our kids. There's a little bit of spanking that moved to the quick adjustments of a hand slap or the sassy little flick, oh, you can't say that, that's not kind, or that not.
My mom was the pinch.
Yeah, pinch. Something. Those little things, right? Those fast moving, ah.
Yeah.
But then as they get bigger, you have the conversations because it's not a life or death situation. It's a we can all calm down and have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think so much of this conversation is about fundamentally child development, right? A kid is never the same from the time they're 2 years old to the time they're 10 years old to the time they're 18. And there are different strategies that you're going to implement in parenting at different ages.
Absolutely.
So it just makes sense.
For me, it seems like it's stopped for all three of my kids. I have a baby now that's 13 months old that hasn't been spanked. But I've stopped about 5 because the spanking is intentional and it's for a very specific consequence, that's articulated. So it's not just for anything that they do wrong. It's this is what capital punishment is in our home.
I agree with that.
And so they don't break those rules anymore.
What are some examples?
So the capital punishment in our home is if they are disrespectful to me or their mother.
Right.
And anything else is another consequence. This is how I've done it. But that is articulated. They know it. When they get spanked, it's not emotional. I'm not mad at them. I sit down and explain, you know why you're getting spanked? I do. I don't want to do this. I hate this, but this is the consequence.
Yeah. What's funny though is with the disrespect, we used what we called sassy sauce, which is just apple cider vinegar. And so instead of spanking, and I have 2 older boys and a younger daughter, so.
Ladies and gentlemen, didn't I tell you all about Jeanette, man? I told y'all. I told you. She has a manual somewhere. There's a manual somewhere or a booklet that he's using. She's talking about apple cider vinegar now. What? what is that going? What are you doing? What are you doing with that? Like, what's going on with the apple cider vinegar, Jeanette? Like, she strikes me as like she has a recipe somewhere for it. There's like an old recipe for this apple cider vinegar that she's making at home. She probably, like mason jars full of apple cider vinegar somewhere. Like Jeanette has a manual somewhere, guys.
So my boys were like, I don't want sassy sauce. And I was like, then you need to apologize for how you're treating me and how you're speaking. So a little sassy sauce goes a long way.
Let's bring in our disagreeers.
Sassy sauce. Sassy sauce.
You want to start us off?
Well, I was just wondering how many of you were spanked as kids? Okay. I was never spanked. I was threatened, and my mom would I remember she would come up to my room with like a metal spatula and like put it on my dresser when I was supposed to be in bed and say like, if I have to come up again, I'm going to use it. Never hit me. To me, I was just taught it was wrong to hit people, anyone. Never mind like someone that you're supposed to love the most, So I, like the thought of hitting a child to me makes me.
Christina, be careful, because I'm about to take a point away from you. You're talking about hitting, and they're talking about spanking. Okay? Yes, some may say it's the same thing, and guess what? They'd be wrong. Because hitting and trying to hurt somebody is very different from a spanking and discipline. Okay? They're not trying to hurt their children. They're trying to discipline their children. And you're using hitting because you think it's going to have this wow effect on the people. I noticed that you're using that term. Hitting to me is just wrong for anybody. Well, anybody is not your kids. Anybody is not your kids. I'd be very interested to ask her if she supports capital punishment. I bet you she does. I bet you if you were to go ask her about the punishment for criminals, I bet you she would be in support of capital punishment. I'm looking at her and I'm looking at her body language, right? And there's something about me that's not trusting her answer. It's no difference if you want to talk about hitting or hitting for anybody. You're basically talking about hurting or hurting anybody. So if that's the case, I would like to know if she supports capital punishment. Okay? Because like I said, this is about discipline. It's not about hitting. And I noticed that she's using that word. And then she throws in anyone. She just throws everybody in the same pot. Everybody. She threw the children in with the criminals. She threw your household in with the criminals. There's a difference between discipline and trying to hurt somebody. Let's go.
Like sick.
Can I ask you, if your mom was like putting things on the table saying, don't make me use it, but you never saw her use it, as you got older, did you ever look at it and be like, she's not going to do it? And then you would still do things?
Maybe.
I think that kind of connects with what everybody has mentioned thus far. Like you mentioned child development, you mentioned kind of how you grew up. How I grew up, I got spanked like 5 times because I got it. But my sister, people in my family, it was every day. They're the ones, as they've reached adulthood, who are the most problematic ones. So I understood at that time, I'm like, oh, this is not the way to administer the appropriate correction and or the discipline, because I could see you guys and you got it like from 0 to 50 and like nothing has been beneficial for you. So it's just like how I parent my children, but children are different. So not like you're mentioning that suffice for you. Like you saw it and you're like, okay, but some kids are like, run it, let's go. Like I'm gonna challenge that spoon to the very end of it. So then you have to build relationship. And relationship allows you to know how to have conversation, how to present the thing to the child. So that's the way I consider the parenting with spanking. As a teacher, we have to navigate how to have that expectation fulfilled, and we can't do that. So then it helps me as a parent be like, well, how do I develop my parenting skills, considering I'm a teacher?
It wasn't that long ago where spanking was common in the classroom, not just with parents. Does anybody
see? And let me tell you something. For the strict side, just because of what Denise says, I'm taking a point away. Because she got right up in there and talked about herself being a teacher and her only being spanked 5 times in her childhood, and looking at her siblings and saying, hey, those spankings didn't work out for you. But in her very profession, they used to spank children. And they used to hit them with rulers. In her very profession. Catholic schools were notorious for pulling out rulers and spanking children. She's getting a point taken away from that for not even mentioning it. That's your profession. Don't wipe your face. Do not wipe your face. We live in a world where when you walk out of your front door, you're not guaranteed to make it back home. There is no guarantee. We take it for granted that we're going to make it back home. You want your children to know what this world is about. You want your children to walk out with as much discipline as possible. You want them to know their surroundings. And I'm getting this living in a bubble feeling right now. And if that's the case, you're sadly mistaken. You're sadly mistaken. Discipline can go a long way in life for any individual. And I don't think you should be sacrificing it for a friend or some type of sit down on the couch and therapy type situation. It's too many things out here going on out here in the world for you trying to be politically correct when you have a duty of raising a child. If you have given birth to a child, it's your duty to not bring your child undisciplined around other children and him and that child not know how to act. You see it all the time. You see it all the time. You see it all the time. There's always one kid, one child that can come around other children, and you can tell which one is not disciplined. There could be a child in there that's nice as pie, and then there's one kid that keeps taking his stuff. And the parent is sitting there looking, and there's no discipline involved. Oh, Bobby, you shouldn't have done that. But the other child is in tears. You got a point taken away for that, Denise. Sorry.
Here in support of, it extending beyond just the parental role.
I've got an actually interesting story. So my old man was in the military. I grew up all over the place, and my freshman year of high school, I was in Alabama. We had gotten in trouble, me and my buddies, for our substitute teacher. And the next day he came in, he had a list of names that had been bad in class, and I was on that list with a few of my Southern buddies. And so he said, you guys got 2 options. I can call your parents, or you can go down with me to the principal's office and get paddled. I didn't want to be the kid that was like, no, call my parents. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a paddle too. And he took us down to the principal's office. He was a big corn-fed boy with his own custom-made paddle, and he gave us 2 hard-ass whoops on our ass in front of the principal. And I got to say, it was makes for a great story, but I never acted up for a substitute ever again.
Did they do that to the females too, or just
I never saw anybody else in the school get paddled.
I remember specifically, it was, I don't know how young, but the teacher made me put my hands out like that and took a ruler, like bop, bop. And I remember thinking in my head, I don't even think I told my parents because I thought I would get in trouble for getting in trouble.
You hear that, Denise? Right in your own profession, it was happening and taking place because they thought it was the right thing to do. They thought it was the right thing to do, but you didn't mention it, and that's why you got a point taken away for your team that Adam got right back, of course, because Adam's on fire right now. But it would have been nice to hear it from a teacher that it used to happen in that profession, and you neglected to mention it. So.
But I remember feeling so disrespected.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that with my parents. Like I knew when I did something like, and my dad said, like I said, I'm gonna spank you, or my mom might have like gave a slap or something. I was doing something. But for this teacher, someone else to do that to me,
You
I
felt
remember
like you were
thinking,
shamed, right?
Yeah, I
And
felt like.
Was it public, like in front of the
And I
rest of the
couldn't do
kids?
anything, and I felt like, how dare you?
Gentle parenting leads to weak kids. Will the agreeers please step forward?
So I have 3 kids. I have a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And I used to be free range, and I used to be like, just let these kids do what they want to do and have fun. And my mom used to whip me all the time, and I didn't like it, so I'm just gonna be like this free range mom. So my son, he was doing good for a long time. He was hanging out with his friends. And then he's always wanted to be with his friends, never wanted to go home. I'm like trying to be just this chill mom, not really knowing what's going on over there. The next thing I know.
See that, people? Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you? We just talked about this. This is the see? That boy, he probably got big in the house and probably started thinking that he was a grown man, not paying any bills, hanging out with friends outside the door in the neighborhood, and things happen. No father around, and things happen. Things start to happen.
My son is talking about, Mom, I got high today with my friends. I'm like, high? What do you mean you got high? It got so bad where he was like overdosing and always calling me to school, like he's up here again, he's overdosed, he's in the hospital. And I'm like, dang, all I was trying to do is be this free range mom where he could just be free and do what he want to do, have fun and be with his friends. And now everybody telling me like, you failed your son. And now he's like with his father in Louisiana. And so, yeah, so I just feel like you can't be free range. You have to be like a balance. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna let these kids have so much fun and be happy. And I was just trying to be that cool mom, and it just backfired on me.
I think convoluting gentle and free range though isn't right, because just because they're free range doesn't mean I'm executing gentle parenting.
Yeah.
So in our household, we don't like the concept of gentle parenting, because this whole idea that you don't inflict punishment, you give alternatives and kind of redirect them with an alternative to something you said earlier, which is society doesn't give you alternatives. Society says this is what you do, and if you don't do it, this goes poorly for you. And so I think this ties to an earlier prompt, which is you punish your children, right? And that's not a non-free range statement to make, because I can still allow my child to have wider boundaries, but still be very clear about where those boundaries are and what the consequences are for those boundaries. And that may be spanking, that may be restriction, that may be being grounded, but just because I'm free range doesn't mean I believe in gentle parenting.
When you define what free range is, I think the strict parenting is probably better, in my opinion, termed as structured parenting, and we're probably a lot closer in terms of our outlook on parenting than I feel like I'm with gentle parenting. Now, when I say gentle parenting, I talk about this on social media. Everybody corrects me and tells me that's permissive parenting, and it gets into these semantics, and I'm like, well, it's kind of maybe the difference between socialism and communism. It's all kind of the same thing, in my opinion, at least what I observe, because I care more about what the outcome of something is than what people actually espouse and say what it is. And I think when you're talking about gentle parenting, just using that term to begin with, to what you were just saying, the world is not gentle. And at the end of the day, my role as a parent is to prepare my child for the world. Everything else is fun and a side quest or whatever else. But my fundamental role is to get this child ready to go into the world. And if they've had gentle parenting, I think you're teeing them up for going into the world really underprepared for what the world is going to look like and how it's going to treat them.
Well, and specific to the prompt says the child will be weak, right? And so why does gentle parenting make the child weak? The gentle parenting makes the child weak because the child believes at the end of it that they will get what they want. They will get something they want. And you try to pose it. I mean, what happens when the child says, no, I don't want that? Well, you try to come up with something else that the child's going to pick, and it elevates the child on top of this hill of what you want is the most important thing. And that makes a selfish, weak child that cannot handle when somebody looks at them and says, sorry, you can't have that.
Well, and they go into the workforce and their boss isn't going to be like, oh, how did you feel about not getting the job done? Why did you feel that way? Let's talk about an alternative way for you to get to the job done. It's going to be like, no, why did you do it? Okay, here's the consequence. You know, you're fired now, you're laid off, or whatever that looks like. So I think consequences and teaching kids, at least varying degrees, and it gets more and more towards that point of entering into the real world, it needs to reflect that, build up to that. So you're sending them off prepared and ready to kick ass.
Let's bring in our disagreeers.
How do we define weak before we want to categorize it as weak? Because we could say that they failed or they didn't do well or they're however it looks like, but weak I think has such a different connotation to what I think gentle parenting leads kids to do as I see it in my classroom and on the playground with my other children.
Where I came from was that stern parenting.
Hey, Denise, you did not answer the question. You were talking with your hands, saying nothing. You were talking with your hand. You did a lot of talking with your hands, and you was not saying nothing. These people are talking about preparing their kids for the world and raising their kids for a world out there, and you was not saying anything. But I'm glad you didn't say enough to get your team striked with another point, because I wasn't understanding your response just now. Basically, it wasn't in line with what everybody else is talking about right now. You were almost like you were like giving them advice versus answering the question.
My wife came from free range, and we battled as we were raising our kids back and forth. What I do know is that more structure as they were younger, we talked about the spanking and blah, blah, it worked. But that structure can turn against you. Me becoming more gentle as my kids started getting older and them able to come to me and talk to me about things definitely helped them in their lives. And they talk about that now because they could come home and talk to me about situations that was going on. It wasn't just the situation of like, no, you do this, you go out, you drink, you go out, you have sex, you go out, you do this, I'm gonna come down on you with a hammer. I wanted them to understand, it's your life. If you go out there and do this, I'm gonna be sad, but it's gonna be the consequences that you're gonna have to face. So I feel like it's a combination, like you guys were saying, it's a combination of the parenting. At certain points, you have to be that stern parent. You have to have that backbone. But I don't think being gentle with your kids and talking to them and listening to them will make them failures. I just don't. My daughters lost their virginity long after all their friends. Why? Because sex wasn't a taboo thing. Mm-hmm. Now, the way I was raised, you don't do it, you don't talk about it. I was raised in a Baptist church, But being able to talk to my kids about sexuality and what with their bodies, they were understood. It was not you hiding it from daddy. It was, that's you and that's your decision.
If gentle parenting solely means communicating with your kids, and I'm a huge proponent of that. I absolutely believe in gentle parenting and communicating with your kids and having them be able to talk to you and talk through things with them without making them feel shamed. Mm-hmm. But if gentle parenting means we're going to avoid consequences because we're going to talk about your feelings and we're going to really just try and circumvent any sort of negative feelings,
Adam's on fire,
consequences that might create a negative feeling. That's something I'm very much.
No, I agree.
I was just going to ask. So gentle parenting is a thing. That's a construct. Yeah. Is there anybody in this group that feels specifically like you know what that gentle parenting construct is?
What I think gentle parenting is the avoidance of consequences or avoidance of correcting behavior and then making excuses for your child on why they're acting that way, right? So, for example, I know this person that their child does act out quite a bit, and it's not just a one-time thing, it's like multiple people saying it, and then the mother is like, oh, well, he's just very young and he doesn't understand. And this child's 5. I'm like, he's not really that young anymore, he should be understanding at this point. So that's what I consider gentle parenting, is avoiding the consequences and then making excuses for your child's behavior.
So I still think that's framed very negatively, because there's a positive parenting concept, and primarily the parenting concept of gentle parenting is positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. That's the fundamental value of
Can you explain what that looks like?
My child is throwing a fit, okay, and I'm having trouble with them. Rather than threatening them or spanking them or, saying you're going to bed when you get home, I sit there and say, rather than using your energy to throw a fit, can I interest you in doing this thing?
Because that's PBIS for teachers. You're hitting your friends, you're stabbing, you're cursing, you know what? What is a better option? Rather than, that is not a better option. Rather than, we have rules that we've discussed, and this is a natural consequence to you violating the contract and the agreement that we had.
Do you use that in your
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best with Denise. I'm trying my best with Denise. There is no contract, Denise. There is no contract. Watch the board, people. That's right. She's not strict. She's not strict. I don't know if she realizes that she's not on the right side. She's not strict. Her philosophy is more free range. It's not a contract, Denise. Who said you were in a contract with your children? It's not a contract. Actually, it's a dictatorship with parents. When they say you got to do something, you have to do it. If they say take the trash out, you have to take the trash out. If they say wash the dishes, wash the dishes. Clean your room, clean your room. No friends over, no friends over. No ice cream tonight. No cake tonight. You're not in a contract with somebody that don't pay the bills. See, this goes into other things. This goes into other situations. Do you know what I mean? It goes in and about, now it's about your household. It's not even really about the children at this point when you start talking like that. You're not in a contract with somebody that's not getting up, going to work, and paying the bills. It's just not. Almost every situation I've ever seen with parents and kids, it's a dictatorship. Until later. Some of those dictatorships never end. Don't you know that? You could be somewhere married with kids, and when you go back to mom's house, it's a dictatorship up in there for you and your wife. That's why you got a point taken away. Because you're almost like you're almost asking to borrow Jeanette's pamphlet or manual. You're almost asking to borrow Jeanette's manual right now in this situation. Like opening up the book and trying to find out if it's in chapter 5, section A. No, it's not. It's no manual to this thing.
Have to.
Yeah, you have to.
So that's why it's such a detriment to the classroom, because we are not providing consequences. We are not doing anything to really address what the issue is. It's if you do this thing that we know that is not appropriate, that we know it's violating a rule, a goal, an expectation that we've already discussed, right? Because we're supposed to do those said things. But permissive and being gentle, it's just like, we understand children. They just need to feel, and they do need to feel. But I think we talked about that earlier, understanding that strict doesn't mean restrictive. No. It doesn't mean oppressive. Right. It just means we have guidelines, we have expectations, we have all these things that we do expect because it's understood. It's a natural consequence. It's not punitive.
The whole thing with gentle parenting is I think that I want my kids to think of me as gentle. I don't want them to be scared of me. I don't want them to think, oh my God, Mom, I'm gonna get in trouble by Mom. I'm gonna get in trouble. I want them, I'm gentle. Everything else out in the world isn't, right? So, I mean, I that's the way I look at it. It's simple. I want to be the gentle person.
I want to jam on some kind of both of you guys were saying. I think I've been in business for 20 years. I'm an entrepreneur, and so I've realized that in business, over 20 years of doing this, that both carrots and sticks work. And you got to know how to apply both of them. It's not like I can just do carrots and get the behavior I need out of the people that work for me. So I think you need both. And I think when we say negative consequences, I actually don't think that's fair. I think the structure and the consequence is actually very constructive and positive, and we label it as negative. I feel like because I do give my kids structure and because they understand that Dad is going to follow through on what he says, it actually builds trust with us. And I feel like I have a lot of communication with my kids. I don't feel like they hide stuff from me. I feel like the fact that I give them structure actually builds a lot more trust. And when I observe parents that don't give structure to their kids and have consequences for actions, I feel like there's a lack of trust and a lack of respect between the parents and the kids.
And I feel like that trust makes us a safe place to come home to.
One thing between free range, maybe there's a disagreement here. free range and what I would say more structured parenting rather than strict parenting, is that it's like you're preparing your kids for the game of life. And if that's basketball, if I tell my kids, just go out and figure out how to play basketball. Go do it, and you're going to come back and I'm going to celebrate you. They're not going to be ready for life. Now, if I get them into training programs, if I get them structured, if I'm teaching them fundamentals, if I'm in the weeds with them, giving them consequences of structure, now when they get ready for basketball, they're light years ahead. So I do think there's a difference. I would use the word weak. I think 10 years of structured training is going to make them way stronger than 10 years of non-structured training is going to make them
And I would agree with you. The only thing I would disagree is that, like, for instance, I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. All three of my children are. And I think all three of them are entrepreneurs and have their own companies because of that gentle parenting I have with them, talking about their feelings and helping them navigate life. But the structure behind it is what makes them be on their game.
I think we're the same person.
I think
Adam, a question I have for you, just to kind of wrap this up. There's maybe a little bit more like toughness, or there's consequences. You're talking about the importance of consequences that can be seen as tough. Do you ever worry that toughness could lead to your kids concealing things from you?
Yeah, I think if I just came home and was just the disciplinarian, then for sure. But I love my kids. I spend as much time as I can with them, and anytime there is a consequence, they understand it, and they're not even resentful about it. They may not want it, but they're like, we get it, Dad. I understand. This is what happened. I screwed up. So we have those types of conversations, and they're very open with me. I mean, we talk about everything. There's nothing that's taboo. There's nothing like, we don't talk about that, or just because I said so. If there's a rule, I'm going to go through why and how important it is for them. Not for me. It's not to make my life more convenient. It's not to make it easier for me to be a parent. It's because this is what the world looks like, and there has to be consequences for this type of behavior. And I don't want to do this. I hate being that guy, but I love you enough to do it.
I am okay with my child rejecting the religious beliefs that I instilled in them. Will they agree or step forward?
Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the religious beliefs, Adam's on fire, and he's preparing his kids for the world. And he's making a lot of sense, and he's making a lot of good points. And let me tell you something. He's carrying the strict parents on his back by himself. He's carrying that entire side right now by himself, believe it or not. If you've been watching, he's carrying that side. And on the other side, Steven's doing a good job. Steven's doing a good job carrying his weight, because right now, Ray Lynn is responsible for losing a point, and she said some things that was that just didn't kind of like add up to where she couldn't help put some points on the board. She talked about a few things and that wasn't pertaining to the question. It was about her friends and the other adults and not the children. So, I want you guys to pay attention to that. Pay strict attention to that, to like who's making these points and who's like carrying their team right now. Because I'm telling you, for the strict parents, Adam is responsible for about 38 points right now. Alone. He's the Michael Jordan over there. So let's go. Let's get into this religion thing. Let's see how this ends up. I mean, because if you notice, Free Range started out blowing them out. And right now, strict parents are up right now. Thanks to Adam. They're up thanks to Adam. He's carrying them right now. Let's go. Let's see what's going on. Because Adam, I can tell you this right now, buddy. You're not getting any help from Denise. You're not. You're just not. I don't even know she's responsible for a point right now. And she's a teacher.
I, for one, am not very religious. I was baptized Catholic when I was really, really young, but I grew up going to Christian churches. So I do have, faith, but I don't necessarily agree with one religion or another. Now, with my daughter, when I had her, my family was a little upset that I didn't choose to baptize her. And my thing was, I want her to find religion on her own. I want her to find beliefs, whether it's God specifically, whether it's a higher power, whatever she decides, because I think ultimately what I want her to be is a good person, right? And I do think that every religion has good things and different things. I don't think one religion has it right. So if she comes to me one day and said, Mom, I'm an atheist, I would, I honestly would kind of approach it with curiosity. curiosity and tell me why. Tell me what's going on. As long as your atheism comes with the foundation of being a good person, I don't see the problem in that.
I have raised my children with a faith, with believing that Jesus is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Raylan. So the door's wide open for your children, right? They're watching you. They're watching you. So then you're going to wait until after you see. What, is everything on the table for your child? Is there anything that you weren't going to take off and say, listen, don't do that right there? Or are you just going to let her just go in there, find something, and then explore it? Watch the board, people. That's right. Because Raylan is not listening to the question that's being asked. It was about what you instilled in you. It's about what they seen you do, what you instilled in them. So if you're going to just sit back and wait for her to go out in this world and find something and then bring it back to you, and then you're going to decide to give your 2 cents about it and your input about it and then want to explore it, why can't you explore it prior? Don't you think you want to explore it prior to find out there's no potholes? I mean, what if there's a problem somewhere with one of them? Why would you want to deal with it? Why would you want to deal with it when it's too late? Why would you want it to be? Why would you want it to come home? What about, how about before you leave this door, don't bring that back? Come on, Stephen. Where you at over there, man?
Is the Son of God, and that is what I have offered them. I have taken them to church. They've watched VeggieTales. They know the Bible, and it is now up to them to go out and decide for themselves. And if they don't decide, my job as a mother is to be a safe place for them to land, to pray for them, and to love them, and to just hope that that's where they come back to. But I would not be angry with them, and I would not reject them.
My situation, I am in a biracial religion house. My wife is Jewish, you know, so I'm Baptist. I was raised Baptist. So as we were raising our kids, we raised them with both of our religions and both of the historics, and this is the beliefs and the holidays. So we did Passover, we did Easter, we did all of them. I consider myself spiritual now.
Derek, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? That you, Derek, if anybody's out there, and if you don't know what this means, okay, Derek just explained what it means to be unevenly yoked. If you don't know what that means, you can go look it up. But it's the definition of being unevenly yoked. You're celebrating any and everything. Somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong in there. Okay? Everybody can't be right. Everything can't be right. But you're just bringing it all in to be safe. Just in case. That's what that just sounded like to me. That sounded like a smorgasbord of just everything. We just did it all. She's this, she's that. We celebrated this, that, and the third. You just brung everything in because you wanted a safe place. Watch the board, people. See? Stephen, I apologize, but Derek did this. Derek did that. Because You have everything going on there. You're not giving them one or the other. And it sounds like you didn't give them a choice. You just celebrated it all. So it sounds like it's a little bit of unevenly yoked things going on between you and your wife. At some point, that's going to rear its head. That's inevitable. At some point, that's going to rear its head somewhere down the line. So I am a little bit confused about your total situation, Derek, because I know you mentioned that you were bisexual also. So it's like everything is going in that household. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not, you like men and women, but you're married. She's this, you're that. So you celebrate it all. At some point, that thing is going to rear its head somewhere down the line, and I don't know where it's going to do that at. But at some point, you're going to have to. You can't stand in the middle. You're on the fence right now. You're lukewarm. The glass is half full or half empty. Which one? But you're trying to play it safe, and you're trying to be in the middle of right where everything can just go on instead of you going to one side or the other. I don't know. You guys tell me, but he's getting a point taken away because he's not really answering the question the way it was posed to him, and he's talking. We call that double talk because you're not standing on one thing or the other. But I do know that's what they call being unevenly yoked. It's when you have somebody on your other side believing in one thing and you believe in another thing, and you're just trying to mesh everything together and come up with jambalaya. And it don't always work out that way. Because sometimes those things don't go together. You're not putting peanut butter on a fish sandwich because it doesn't go together. You're not putting water in your cereal, not unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Because they don't go together, right? Most people want milk. That's my point. So let's hear what he has to say.
I don't consider myself Baptist, and I really would want my kids to discover it on their own. Yes, would I be heartbroken if they came to me and said that they were atheists? To me, I just feel that's a lonely way to exist. If you want to, that's fine, but that would hurt me more so than them choosing something to believe in.
So I was raised very religious, and it served me well in a lot of ways, and I've raised my kids in the same religion that I was brought up in. But the older that I've gotten, the more it's apparent to me that religion is basically middle management. It's man-made. And so it can be a tool that's effective for helping us draw closer together. It also could be a tool closer to God. It can also be a tool that keeps us further away from God and gets us focused on things that isn't from God. So I have a problem with religion, even though I consider myself actively religious. And
what's your faith?
Christian,
Got it.
specifically Mormon.
Got it.
Yeah. And so I have a problem with any time we put somebody between us and God as the spokesperson for God. And I think that's the nature of religion, is to say, hey, we know what you're supposed to do. We know what rules you're supposed to follow. We're going to dumb down these very complex things into simple Sunday school answers, memorize those, do what you're told. Oh, and by the way, pay us money while you're at it. And there's something in that that's just really dishonest to me, and it rubs me the wrong way. However, at the same time, there's so much value in religion too, so it's a mixed bag, and I find that having that kind of framework, speaking of parenting and stuff, religion can be that, especially for kids, where you can teach them collectively, this is what we center around, or these types of values. And so ultimately though, if my child came and said, hey, I feel this way about your religion and I'm more interested in this religion, I'd actually be interested with them.
So I'm
Adam, that thing that's rubbing you the wrong way in the middle of the ground there that you're talking about is called the truth. Let me tell you about it. It's called the truth. Because somewhere in the middle of what you and Derek was talking about, there was truth. And I heard you say something in there, and I know that it was like sent to Derek in a way, but then you took it back, because you were saying that, you were basically saying in your comment that there's a lot about religion that rubs you the wrong way. And that's because you have so many different religions out here right now. You have so many different practices out here right now, and they all got these religions out of one book. Most of these religions come from one book. And it's all about the way they've read it, perceived it, and understood it, which is why you have so many different practices out here, which is why you have so many different denominations out here, when you have so many different places of worship out here. And this is when it goes back to what I was saying about it being unevenly yoked. So you can have some people that believe in so many different things that they don't know what to believe in, and it's enough to confuse children to where they're turned away from any kind of faith, and they're highly susceptible to come back as atheists, to believe in nothing. So I totally understand what you're saying, Adam. You were making some points, and I just wanted to add in there to you, buddy, that the thing that you're talking about is the truth. Where is the truth? What is the truth? There's somewhere lies in there the truth. And if you're putting too much on kids and on children as they're coming up, they're going to feel totally against religion when they get older, just like Derek was feeling when he came out of being in the Baptist church. He was feeling a certain kind of way about it. So how do you think the kids are going to feel about it? Celebrating everything, not knowing what's what. Let's go.
Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic. I left my faith in high school and didn't come back to it for a few years after I graduated high school. And now that I've come back, we are raising our kids Catholic. So I'm very confident in our belief system, and that I believe that it is the truth. That being said, I also, because of my own experience, very much believe that faith is a journey, not a destination, right?
So, Adam, did you hear what Stephen said? Adam's the first one today that hit a three-pointer. Y'all see the scoreboard? He just hit a three-point shot. He just hit a three-point shot. Now, if you guys listen closely, we've heard like 3 or 4 different religions up here. Mormon, Christianity, Judaism, and atheists. We've heard it all just within this discussion. Right here, we just got done talking about it. Just in this discussion, in this debate right here, we've heard 4 different denominations of whatever people are practicing. Just right in here. And that's and we haven't even heard everybody else speak yet. So we heard Roman Catholic, Christian, Mormon, atheist, and I mean, it's somewhere in there, there's the truth. Somewhere in there lies the truth. And what is it? What's the truth? I can tell you this, that within all those denominations and those beliefs, especially with a kid, you can bring about confusion. Derek, because Derek has 2 going on in his household. That's confusion. So somebody has to stand on something and relinquish something else, because they all can't be right. But I like what Stephen just said.
So you don't land in some church and are magically, oh wow, this is amazing. It's a conversion experience. And so, that conversion experience I had to go through, and it started as a child. I mean, it started by shedding off what my parents were pushing on me, And then and ultimately, I came back to it as my own. And so when I think about children, right, children will eventually have to be out in the world doing their thing, and they have to be able to make their own decisions.
Let's bring in our disagreeer.
Wow.
Okay, so I raised my kids in the church. When I was married, I was in the church. When I was divorced, I was in the church. Went to church every Sunday for years. I would drive like an hour away to go to church every Sunday. When I finally realized my son was out of control, and I was like, Lord, what did I do wrong? And I'm praying and I'm talking to God. I'm like, what did I do wrong with my son? He said, you stopped going to church. That's exactly what he told me. So I said, yeah, I did stop going to church. And so with that being said, my kids, they cannot change religion. They cannot stray away from God because they're already seen it happen. In my family, I already seen how far my son was out in the world once I stopped going to church and tried to be this cool mom. So for me, I want my kids to stay grounded in religion. I even tell my son to pray, read your Bible, because that's the only thing that's going to keep you in this world.
Yeah, one of the things that I
Ho, Queen. Wait a minute. Believing in God doesn't mean that you're being religious. It doesn't mean that you're in a religion because you believe in a higher power. That doesn't mean that you're being religious. You just believe in a higher power. If they're praying to a higher power or to whomever they serve, that doesn't mean that they're in a particular religion. What they were up there talking about on the panel is very specific denominations, very specific religions. And I think I think you just said that because you probably misunderstood the question. Because you're saying no, stay in your religion. Well, the religion could be anything. Religion could be anything. So I understood where you was coming from, Queen. But I think you just meant don't forget God. Don't leave God out. I think that's what you were trying to say, and that's why I'm not taking a point away from you, because I understood what you were trying to say. You were saying, listen, just believe, keep your faith and believe in God. But it doesn't mean that you have to practice a specific denomination. Like, he doesn't have to be a Mormon in order to believe in God. He doesn't have to be a Roman Catholic to believe in God. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure the last thing you wanted to be is an atheist. So I get where you're going, but I think you just misunderstood the question. Let's go.
I love about that, right, is that we're talking about parenting, right? Our parents model their behavior after us. So the story is not just about whether you were telling them they had to be Christian or not. Mm-hmm. It was, for me, a story about how are you exhibiting to them the life that you believe would make them healthy, which involves going to church, right? So, you know, I think that's perhaps where there's a little bit of a give and take there. You know, if I'm showing them a lifestyle that's not showing them the beliefs, right? I'm not actually expecting it of them. Whereas if they can see by my lifestyle, that's something they're going to model after, and they're going to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like, you know, I did the Saturday church school, the Wednesday church school, every Sunday in church, and that it didn't do as much for me as one of the things we did with my kids growing up to have that time as a family is we had dinner together every night. Mm-hmm. And we sat there, there's no phones, we talked. That molded my kids into being good people more so than taking them to a building, I feel, or telling them that they had to read a Bible. It's sitting there having that conversation with them about what are you doing in your life? How are you being a good person? What happened to you in school today? How did you handle that?
I have regrets as a parent.
I have a lot of regrets as a parent, mostly because of the way that I was parented and then the way I approached parenting with what I had been given.
See, guys, Denise, see, I told you guys there's always some type of underlying condition going on there. Her beef is the way that she was being raised. And I bet you she has some very strict and disciplined parents, which is why she's not big on being disciplined or disciplining. She's thinking right now. Look at her face. She's going through her memory bank right now. And I can't wait to hear what she has to say. Let's go.
I think I tried to do the best I could with what I understood at the time, but I just didn't have the tools that I needed to parent my children with the consideration of what I know now. I think partnering with somebody is something that is so important, but nobody really emphasized how important it is who you have children with, who you build relationship, who you build with a community with, that has a strong and heavy impact on how you parent your children, how they understand parenting.
I don't know if my kids will call it, but my regret is that I pushed my kids too hard to be successful. I was one of those parents, and they're very successful now, but I feel like I could have backed up a little bit and not pushed so hard. So I really regret just being that parent of seeing a potential in your child and then pushing.
I'll be curious to see what they say about not having regrets, because I feel like just as a human, there's like, oh man, I really shouldn't have had that second cup of coffee today. Like that's just kind of how I live. I don't live in this constant state of regret, but I do live, I'm like, oh man, I was too hard on my kids that day, or I wish I could have said this softer, or I wish I would have pushed a little harder. But for me, I got married really young, had my kids really young, and I parented a lot out of emotion. Like I was emotionally unhealthy. And so learning that, I wish I would have gotten in counseling earlier than I did. And I wish that I could have parented through that a little bit more rather than.
I told you guys about Jeanette, right? I told you. She said she was parenting out of emotion. So it's like she went and looked up some things on parenting and put it together in a pamphlet. And he put it together, and I believe she's looking out of a manual, man. I really do. I believe she's learned some things on the way, but I still believe that she thinks that there's a manual. I believe she believes that there's a manual and there's a right way or a blue book to parenting, and somebody needs to tell her that it's not. It's not. It's not a manual. It's not a blue book to it. It's real life out here. And if you're not dealing with real life, then you're probably going to miss the mark. You're probably going to miss the mark. Derek, you pushed your kids. You have some regrets. You pushed your kids. You said you pushed them too far. That's probably because you was probably trying to get them to exceed some things that your parents didn't push you to do. Most parents that do that, they either want to see them succeed or they want to see them get to a level that they never reached. Parents do that all the time in sports. They push their kids in sports because they want them to reach a level that they never reached. It's interesting. It's interesting. I never understood that, but parents do it. Now, you want to teach them the right things, but as far as they're going to take it, your kids don't have the same makeup as you. They may be your children, but they don't have the same mentality. You don't have the same mentality. You know what I mean? So they may not be able to withstand some of the things that you went through. They may not be able to withstand it. They may not be built for that internally. You know, it's an acquired taste. You know what I mean? It's different for everybody. So like I said, I never understood that. Your kids are going to take on their own personality and they're going to be who they want to be in life. Eventually, if they want this or whatever they want, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. The only thing you can do is just basically get behind it and support it. Denise, I feel like if you have children, I feel like you regret the way you were raising them because maybe they turned against that system that you think works of not disciplining. Maybe it backfired on you. Possibility. Let's hear some more.
Then learn it as I grow.
What I regret is my son always say, "Mom, you too hard, you too tough, you don't ever cry, you fake." I'm like, what? But I wish I would have cried more because I did cry behind closed doors. But they never saw that side, and my son said he wished he would have seen that side because it would have made him probably like a better person or a better kid. But
we're gonna bring in our perfect parents.
No regrets. Show us the tattoo.
First of all, I want to say maybe I've done things that weren't ideal. I mean,
I know Ray Lynn did not go over there with the no regret side. I know that ain't Ray Lynn. No regrets.
My kids have seen me go through like different mental health issues and just things like that. I mean, they've, it's not perfect. No one's perfect, but regret. They got to see that you have feelings, that you're, you get upset. It gave you the opportunity to have that discussion with them.
This goes into what am I trying to prepare my child for, right? They're going into a world full of imperfect people. Yeah. That world includes me and their mom, and we are going to do things imperfect. I don't regret being an imperfect person. If I regret being an imperfect person, I'm going to be miserable for my entire life.
So I have to end it there. As a fairly new parent, I have a 3-year-old daughter. This has been very, very interesting. I've written down some mental notes. But I gotta say, I just have like tremendous respect to anybody who is, 8 kids is crazy. But a tremendous amount of respect to all of you, who have raised kids and who are parents. And so thank you guys for being a part of this discussion.
Well, good luck on your journey.
I need it.
Don't make any mistakes.
And just a reminder to the viewers, if you leave a comment, these are human beings. Be respectful, be constructive in what you add to the conversation. Thank you for watching Middle Ground. Subscribe to our channel. Watch more episodes. Thanks, guys.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. What a great debate. And he's having a new child. He's having a newborn child. Wow. So he was set up there as a learning experience for him. Listen, congratulations to the strict parents. You're the winner of today's debate, 49-41. As you can see, everybody brought something unique to the table. It was great commentary from everybody. There were some question marks around a few people and what they brought to the table in their history around kids and raising kids and even in their profession. But for the most part, this discussion was the points were put on the board, and it wasn't done with any bias. So the strict parents, and especially Adam and Stephen, they both I believe Stephen has 8 kids, so he has a lot of experience, man. He has a lot of experience. Like you got a lot of on-the-job training when it comes to raising some kids. So if he says something, and he's basically seen it all, and he has both sons and daughters, so he's seen it all. The experience is there. So when you're talking with somebody that may have one, you know what I mean? It's not the same. So you can't even speak about the other gender, depending on what gender you have. You may have a boy, but you can't even speak on what it's like raising a girl because you don't have it. He has the experience in both, and he has a lot of kids, 8 kids. That's not an easy job. He has to be out there working to take care of his kids. He has to be ready to put them into the world, send them to college, the whole 9 yards. So that's why when I was listening to him, he was dropping some heavy points. And at one time, he dropped a 3-pointer on the people. Adam, same thing. He has more than one, and he has boys and girls. So it's not by accident that Adam and Stephen were the ones putting the most points up for their teams. And both have a lot in common. And I found them agreeing on a lot of things also. If you rewatch this, and as you comment, look at that. You will find out that Adam and Stephen were in agreement on many things. And guess what the most important thing was? The most important thing is that both of them, family units, are still intact, in full. Traditionally, wife, husband, children, family, faith, all of it's together. Now, just all I'm doing is just putting the truth out there. Family, faith, and their children, their household, the job, all of it's they both of those two men have that. And it seems like that's why they have successful households. It sounds like they have successful household. We're not there to see it, but it sounds like they have successful household, that they have a pretty good hand on the situation that they're living in. and it seems like they're both heading in the right direction. And that wasn't by accident, people. That stuff is not by accident. The proof is in the pudding. And ladies and gentlemen, like I said, congratulations to the strict parents. You are the winner today. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed this Scoreboard Keepers podcast today, this episode of Strict Parents versus Free Range Parents. I want you guys to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and please leave some comments down below, because I want to hear your feedback on this. And hopefully you guys in the future can join us on the panel so we can hear you live and bring you up after the show, and you can give your points right down the bottom at the check-in. If you look down the bottom on the left in the check-in, you can be on this show live, and you can chime in after the show with us and give us your feedback. But ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your day. I hope to see you guys soon. God bless you all out there, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Scoreboard Keepers. Score. This has been fun. Have a good day.